with a system that meets the needs of the people. So I think that kind of defines it as to what a broken system looks like, and also not only that, but what needs to be done with a broken system. One of the things we did at CHAM was we, after beating our head against the wall for about 10 years, we figured, you know, homeless people don't make a majority in our city or in our society, and we need to spread out a little bit. So some of us began working on organizing tenants, and we've worked with Legal Aid and some other people on organizing tenants in slumlords to fight against cockroaches. And also we started working a little bit with the National Alliance of HUD Tenants to try to organize tenants in HUD subsidized housing. So one of the things which is going on now with public housing and HUD subsidized housing, there's a big budget battle going on right now in Washington, D.C. And actually we heard that Mitt Romney came out last month, I think, and said he thinks HUD needs to be done away with, eliminated. But it's interesting because on the other side, HUD itself, via the Obama administration, is proposing cuts. They want to propose project-based housing assistance, and it's kind of a bizarre proposal where they want to cut the housing in 2013, and they think they'll make up for it by borrowing from 2014, something like that. It's really strange, but it's basically what they're talking about is strangling the funding and slowly strangling all forms of HUD subsidized and public housing. And in some ways I think they use this Romney threat as kind of a good cop, bad cop thing, so that they can gradually just ratchet it down and step by step eliminate the funding. There's actually a lot of special interests that make a lot of money from HUD housing, so I don't think they're actually going to get rid of it right away, but because I think what they're actually trying to do is to increase people's rents, reduce the programs, reduce the units, privatize the public housing. There's a whole series of schemes. For example, with the public housing, they've allowed public housing to accumulate something like a $26 billion deficit in their capital budget, so that the housing gets run down and starts falling apart. And HUD actually came up with a really bright idea. They said, I know what we can do. We can just get a mortgage from Wells Fargo. So this is not a good sign for public housing. And these are public resources that people fought for and built over decades. One of the discussions I was involved in recently was with someone from Chicago who's involved in Cabrini Green, which has gone through a whole history. Cabrini Green was built in the 1930s, or shortly after the 1930s, and the question that we were discussing is we had all these housing struggles in the 1930s. We had unemployment councils, we had people moving people back into their homes when they were evicted, and we had the bonus march. We had all kinds of people fighting for housing, and they won. They got public housing. And now, here we are in 2010, and we're still fighting for housing. We're fighting for housing. I know there's people in the room here who are trying to block bulldozers in New Orleans so that the housing wouldn't get demolished there. And we're fighting just as hard, but the housing is disappearing and it's being taken away. So I think that's one of the questions we need to look into. A lot of people have been discussing it here. It has to do with the technology. If they need us as workers, they're willing to provide housing. And I know that's how public housing started in the Bay Area. They had a bunch of shipyards here. They moved a bunch of people in from the South, and they had no place to live. They built public housing in a matter of months. In a matter of months, they had enough housing for the people to work here. And for the last 30 years, they've all been scratching their heads saying, geez, we don't know what to do about homelessness. It's really complicated. We can't figure it out. For the last 30 years, they haven't been able to figure out how to house the homeless. It took them, when they needed the workers, it took them 3 months. And the same thing same thing happened in Cabrini Green. They said it was surrounded by factories, and they built 23,000 units of public housing. When the factories left, they've destroyed Cabrini Green. There's practically nothing left of it.